He took her hand and pressed it against his bare chest. Kassadin said affectionately, "You are truly beautiful. Every time I see you, I have this feeling. Your hands are also very soft." Arlenne suddenly pulled open his pajamas. The man smirked sarcastically, thinking, "See, everyone is the same." But his thoughts were brutally contradicted the next moment. Arlenne said softly, as if talking to herself, "Is this a burn? No wonder I felt a big scar. This was from a knife and an axe, and this is a mark from branding. Even if you were a duelist, you couldn't have so many burn scars. Have you been tortured?" Kassadin's mind was in chaos, and he instinctively responded, "Yes." Arlenne didn't pursue further questions. She just made him sit down, covered his eyes gently, and let the healing light radiate from her palm. As time passed, she released her hand. Kassadin hadn't felt so light in a long time, and the ugly scars were gone. "Did I scare you? I applied the medicine I mentioned last time. I didn't notice these scars before. They must have been painful, right? I'm sorry for making you endure until now. You can relax and rest without worries." Late at night, after Arlenne fell asleep, Kassadin sat up on the edge of the bed. He stared at her for a long time. He had failed again. It turned out he had fallen into the trap himself. The next day, Arlenne encountered a big problem when the Crown Prince came knocking on her door. Even for revenge, Kassadin in his past life could withstand this bastard for so many years. His patience was truly extraordinary. Sasha mentioned the recent rumors while combing her hair. "I heard that the Duke Damian, who tried to assassinate the Crown Prince, is still locked up in prison. But because there is no solid evidence, he should be released soon. Indeed, based on last night's situation, it would be difficult to keep him in prison for too long." And as far as she knew Damian, even if he really committed a crime, he would find a way to get out. After being released, he would definitely try to find out the truth. If he learned the truth, he would try to manipulate Kassadin with that information. Since that was the case, she decided to start from the Crown Prince's side and meet Damian earlier. Arlenne smiled at Sasha and said, "Sasha, help me dress as gorgeously as possible." When she finished grooming and was about to leave, she saw Kassadin leaning against the wall outside the door, looking like he was waiting for her. He asked, "Where are you in such a hurry to go?" She replied, "To meet a guest." He then asked, "Can I come with you?" Arlenne said, "It might not be appropriate." He asked somewhat defiantly, "Why not?" Arlenne mentally commented, "Because you almost poisoned him yesterday." Seeing she didn't answer, the man pouted unhappily and said, "It seems like a very important guest." The beast playing tricks and failing to hide its true nature made Arlenne smile brightly, replying, "Yes, very important." Kassadin no longer pretended about this matter, which for some reason made her very happy. Just as she entered the reception room, the Crown Prince warmly welcomed her. She said, "I apologize for being late, Your Highness." The Crown Prince said nonchalantly, "No need to be so polite with me. You must be curious why I came to find you so early. Let's get straight to the point. How do you see yourself becoming my princess?" Arlenne was shocked and thought, "What is he talking about?" The Crown Prince continued, "His Majesty the Emperor also agrees because you saved my life. It's been circulating outside that you've accumulated a huge fortune through mining. The Healing Master's family, who should have been protected by the royal family, has been suffering from rumors. So His Majesty feels very guilty." Before he could finish, Arlenne rejected him. "Your Highness, this is too sudden, and I am content with my current life." The Crown Prince was surprised and said, "Are you refusing the opportunity to become the most honored person in the Empire?" Arlenne replied, "I understand Your Highness's and His Majesty's kindness." The Crown Prince smiled, "You are truly unexpected. Miss, you are indeed an interesting person." Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Kassadin barged in and said, "Sorry for the interruption." However, there was no apology in his expression. He slammed a plate on the table and said expressionlessly, "I thought you might be hungry, so I baked some pastries." Arlenne thought, "Oh my, Sasha, did Kassadin just take these from you?" The Crown Prince indicated he could leave, but Kassadin completely ignored him. The Crown Prince repeated, "I said you can leave." Arlenne felt like she was going crazy. She had to step in to defuse the situation. "He is my brother, Kassadin. I hope you can forgive his rudeness." The Crown Prince said, "But you two don't look alike at all. You have platinum hair, and he has silver. Your eye colors are different too." Despite seeming eccentric, the Crown Prince was unexpectedly sharp. "It seems you're not related by blood." Arlenne calmly said, "Although we are not related by blood, he is my only brother." The Crown Prince remarked, "With such an outstanding-looking brother, no wonder you have such high standards." The girl admitted, "My brother is indeed handsome." He chuckled and wiped a tear from his eye, saying, "Then please have your handsome brother step aside. We are discussing important matters." Kassadin, with no hint of politeness, asked, "Can I listen?" The crown prince casually replied, "Since you want to listen, I'll tell you. Your sister will become the princess." Arlenne urgently interrupted him, and Kassadin fell silent, his face filled with unstoppable killing intent. The crown prince said, "If you want to refuse, come to the palace tomorrow at noon, alone." After the crown prince left, Kassadin didn't leave. He asked, was what he said true? Now he didn't even bother to hide his expression. She answered, "It should be." He asked again, "Are you planning to go to the palace alone tomorrow?" When Arlenne prepared to keep the appointment, he started finding various excuses to persuade her not to go. Finally, he even commented, "I don't think anything good will come out of this." She struggled not to laugh. Can you predict the future? Just by looking at someone's eyes, you can tell a lot. He looks like a person with extremely poor character. Arlenne thought, oh my, does he even have the right to talk about someone else's character? But she agreed with one thing. She spoke up. "The first time I saw the crown prince, I didn't like him either." The siblings bantered, speaking ill of others and having fun. Kassadin suddenly asked her, "What was your first impression of me?" Arlenne thought for a moment. "I thought you were very much like me." Instead of his outstanding appearance, what truly attracted her were his eyes full of stories, with a faint sorrow and a desolate, bleak void. But when Arlenne asked for his first impression of her, Kassadin didn't want to say. He whispered, "That's a secret." Arlenne thought she shouldn't have expected him to be honest about that. She asked, "Do you think I'm a good person or a bad person?" He answered, "I'm not sure. You can tell by looking into people's eyes, right?" She grabbed Kassadin's sleeve and asked, but he suddenly pushed her away. Kassadin realized his behavior and quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, sister, it was unintentional." Arlenne didn't mind at all, which made Kassadin curious. He asked, "Don't you hate me?" She countered, "Why would I hate you?" He fell silent for a moment and then said suddenly, "To be honest, rather than a good person or a bad person, you seem more like a strange person." Arlenne was a bit taken aback, but he finally started speaking the truth to her. She couldn't help but feel delighted. Kassadin blushed and looked away. He could also be shy. She teased him, "Why is your face so red? Are you still feverish?" If she really had a blood-related brother, would it feel like this? In the study, everything about the Highland Kingdom had been torn away. Compared to Kassadin, she should focus on Damian now, uncover his crimes, and make him fall into the abyss. But Damian was not stupid. It might be better for her to play the fool and get close to him. Arlenne seemed to understand Kassadin's feelings now. She would never forget the pain and death of that day. The next day, Arlenne went to the appointment alone, gracefully lifting her skirt in a curtsy. Arlenne said, "Greetings, Your Highness." She once again rejected the man, who was still insistent on marrying her. However, she was solely focused on revenge. She said, "But you don't love me at all. I am a healer, not your plaything." The prince, however, thought to himself, she is both intelligent and discerning, which made him even more satisfied with her. He said, "Does marriage require love? As long as our interests align, it's sufficient. Marrying me will grant you supreme power, and the royal family can forever control the healing power." Arlenne was not interested and said, "I am content with my current life. But if you allow, we can make a deal." He asked, "Please elaborate." She said, "Isn't it Duke Damian who poisoned you? I heard he is now imprisoned by the royal family. Can you arrange for me to see him? If you allow, I can demonstrate my healing ability to you." The prince was puzzled and asked, "Didn't you say you can't demonstrate without someone being injured?" Arlenne's healing ability was not limited to humans. It extended to animals and even plants. In an instant, a flower that the prince had crushed returned to its original state. The man exclaimed, "This is incredible. Are you a magician? How did you do that?" She replied, "I am just a healer." Just as she restored the flower, the man picked it. He even explained for his actions confidently, "Instead of being stepped on here, it's better to pick it and put it in a vase in the room." She rolled her eyes inwardly, thinking, "Does it make a difference to the flower?" He asked seriously, "But why do you want to see the Duke?" She had anticipated this question, and she could say she had developed a sudden infatuation and wanted to confess her love to him in prison. She realized it sounded strange, especially after being proposed to by someone else. "Why aren't you answering?" he urged. Arlenne asked, "Can you be sure that the Duke is the real culprit?" The prince replied, "No, he already holds the title of Duke. Why would he do such a thing?" "There is no evidence at the moment. It seems more like the work of someone hostile to the royal family. Arlenne followed his lead and fabricated an excuse. The Duke was accused because I identified the poisonous plant that only grows in his territory. So, he was arrested because of me. I feel guilty and want to visit him. He said, but how's that your fault? You just spoke the truth. She pretended to feel remorseful and said, but sometimes the truth can also hurt people. The prince reached out his hand and said, I understand what you mean. I will personally take you there. The plan was set, but Arlenne had been feeling strange since earlier. Why was the knight wearing a helmet in the scorching heat? Inside the prison tower, as the prince escorted her to see Damian, he suddenly stopped and looked back at the knight, asking, why have you been following us since earlier? The knight remained silent, but Arlenne noticed his purple eyes. The prince guessed that the emperor had sent them to monitor him. The prince then turned to Arlenne and said, do you know why I asked you to come to the palace alone? It's because your brother's eyes are abnormal. Arlenne thought to herself that it was because her brother saw him as an enemy. She explained, my brother is just a bit introverted. I'm not talking about how he looked at me. I'm talking about how he looked at you. That's not the gaze of a sister, the prince clarified. Arlenne calmly said, Your Highness, he is a very important family member to me. If you continue like this, my position will become very awkward. The prince remarked, it seems like you care a lot for your brother. She replied, after all, he is the most important person in my life. Arlenne didn't want to linger any longer and found an excuse to dismiss the prince. As both a victim and a suspect, it wasn't appropriate for him to meet Damian anyway. The prince ordered the knight to ensure her safety and asked for his name and military affiliation. Arlenne quickly interrupted him, saying, I will chat for a bit and then leave. You don't need to worry. The man invited her again, saying, my birthday banquet will be rescheduled. This time, you have no room to refuse. I will keep the flowers you gave me safe until then. After the prince left, Arlenne glanced aside and said, Kasabin, what are you doing here? The knight next to her asked, how did you know it was me? She smiled and said, how could I not recognize you? Where did you steal this armor set from? He replied, I didn't steal it. I borrowed it. The owner of this armor will be unconscious for a whole day. You don't need to worry. Arlenne sighed, you really don't care. What if you get caught? Kassin said confidently, I'm confident I won't get caught. I have all the information about the knights. Arlenne wanted to say something more, but Kassin suddenly approached and asked, are you worried about me? Seeing Kassin's eyes light up like a puppy's, how could Arlenne not indulge him? She replied, from the moment I wake up in the morning until I fall asleep at night, I'm always worried about you. He squinted his eyes under the helmet, seemingly smiling. That sounds touching. You're actually worried about me. Arlenne countered, aren't you worried about me too, coming to the palace for me? He naturally took her hand and said, yes, if I weren't worried about you, I wouldn't do such foolish things. Who do you want to see here? You'll know when we get there. They arrived at the 8th floor of the prison, where a man was quietly reading a book. He was the enemy Arlenne hated to the bone, Duke Damian of the North, whose emerald eyes had once fascinated her deeply. Unfortunately, she had been misled by his attractive appearance and hadn't seen the ugliness inside. She greeted him. Do you remember me? Aren't you Arlenne Serica? I remember anyone I've met even once. I believe I've also met this knight, he said sharply. Arlenne wasn't worried. She said, he is a knight of the royal family who brought me here. He responded, then I must have mistaken you for someone else. So, what brings you to the prison? Damian never expected this woman to boldly confess her feelings to him in prison, and Arlenne's actions completely infuriated Kasabin.